Hello, everybody. This is Rebekah Freedom, and this is episode number 7 on Heard Not Seen, produced by the extraordinary John Beathan.
Won't deny that.
And today he'll talk at certain times and offer very interesting, colorful commentary for our topic of the one thing you need to shift anything.
I love it.
And it's not love. People can start guessing.
So before we get into it, is it true to assume that I got a phone call from you this morning at, 8 o'clock asking if you woke me up? Or maybe it was 7:30.
It was early.
Yeah, it was early, and you were pretty upset about something.
Yeah, the inspiration came really early. In that I had, and we've all experienced that righteous indignation where I witnessed an injustice happening to a friend, or what appeared in this world as an injustice happening, and I called you and I was like, listen, I want to talk about what happens when people lose the vision, when corruption is the thing that's driving industry, when there is a lack of care for employees, and ultimately a lot of what Bernie Sanders has been talking about, the 1% mentality. And I was fired up about it.
Those were your words.
Yeah. I was like, I'm lit up. I'm lit up. And I said, well, do you have any commentary about it? I was like, do you have any sort of feelings about and you're like, yeah, I do. And I love it. We just kind of talked about how you're like, well, it creates a bigger problem. So maybe you could say more about that.
Why don't you talk about what happened?
Okay. Yeah. So the names have been changed in order to protect the assholes.
Good.
And now we're going to apply an explicit to this podcast. You're welcome. So, what happened is that I had the privilege of returning to the working class for a very short time. And my plan was always, I will work here until I get fired, or constructively separated, depending on which HR department is listening to this. And that was sort of the course, and it was predictable for me. I was like, I know my personality. I know that I'm big, boisterous. I had it reflected back to me that it's a coworker, that I fill the room. And, but that filling the room was just spirit in me, making the necessary transitions. And so I got let go, and I was like, okay, cool. And ultimately my life has been blissed out, since then. And so what I became aware of was I got a phone call from a person who worked at the same facility as me, and she was like, oh, I got called to come into work and I'm not on my shift. I was like, oh, honey, you're getting fired. You're going to get let go from the position. And the difference between me and her is I already have a business established, and in obviously a lot, my gypsy nature is paying off. It doesn't look like it early on in life. You know, a lot of people are like, stay stable and do the predictable thing. And I will say the irony is entrepreneurship is the most stable thing you can do. I mean, there are high highs and low lows, and in the early years, and that's why they say businesses don't make it, because it's just too much of a flux, a swing where they're just they make money, spend all of it, you're out of business, your concept's not going. But ultimately, when you are your own boss, it's the most stable thing. So for me, getting let go, I was like, freedom, like literally, Rebekah Freedom is about to march on Washington or whatever.
Yeah, you probably would if it wasn't so far away.
Such a walk. I'll leave that up to my friend Chris Bailey, who actually did that, who walked across America. Side note. Okay, so what happened to my friend? She got let go. And her situation is she's a single mother with a 3-year-old, and she was an excellent counselor. She was working towards increased credentials. What happened at this particular facility is that the state regulatory company, Jayco, was about to come in and sort of do an audit, which you want of someone if you are a facility who's taking care of people who are detoxing or getting off of drugs, you want a regulatory agency to come in and sort of make sure that everything's up to code. And while I will say the logistics of the company may be up to code, the ethics are certainly not, because it's not like she had any warning or any cause on her part. For me, I knew that I was just a hot-headed, holy roller who was going to like come in, say what she wanted to say and be who she wanted to be. And I was like, either we're in it for transformation or I'm not in it. And if I'm not in it, that doesn't mean my mission stops here. Like, you don't get to determine my destiny. And thanks for playing. You're welcome. But in her case, it's different for so many people who get fired, because it's not like they have like their Etsy store up and running, or
right,
their backup business going, or they're part of the mill.
Right.
They're part of the mill. So it really bothered me. I was like, part of me was like, I got me. I can, but you let go of somebody who was a good employee, who was completely overworked and under-supported, who you didn't see the day in, day out grind that happened, and she's got a kid.
Bingo.
Yeah.
It's not like you don't have any children that you know of. It's a joke.
Yeah.
And but she has a child, so
yeah.
She has somebody depending on her.
Yeah, she's and I was challenged today to actually call the owner of the company. And
wow.
And part of me sat with the editorial integrity of that to say, like, oh, would I want to get his side of the story?
Sure.
But then I also recognized, I was like, no, because I'm going to do a podcast about it. And ultimately, what does that sound like if it feels like we broke up, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm like the girl in Wayne's World who gets him a gun rack, and I don't own a gun, let alone miniguns that necessitate a gun rack. Like, it's so, I was like, it would be weird me calling, because it's like some disgruntled employee who wants some sort of like, what are you doing? Like, I was like, there's really literally no scenario where this goes over well, even if I call and be like, from one business owner to another, you clearly suck at this. So basically, I didn't. I just was like, no, I'm not going to call. But it's going to spur on this particular topic. The one thing that you need to shift everything. And ultimately, what the events of today highlighted for me was that these particular people who are gathering together to provide support to drug addicts to get sober have lost the vision, have lost, obviously, it's obvious in the way that the company is run, that one of the dictates of whether it's known or unknown, and I cannot know the intents of these people, but what it comes across as is greed.
That was my first thought. Mm-hmm. So in other words, just so you know, a great book called Start With Why. So what they did is they may not have had a vision, but they probably had a why. Mm-hmm. So the question is, what was the why? Why did they start? And you got to be careful about going into some of the history. But I mean, if it's strictly to make money, then it may not be such a good idea. Overarchingly,
in the rehabilitation, I would like put air quotes around that field, there's a lot of fraud happening. In fact, insurance companies are being stricter about paying out because of that. And again, it would make sense that, if people are trying to cash in on little heroin addicts or people using meth or any of the substance, it feels pretty disgusting, right?
Right.
that people are at turning points where they're trying to go through their awakening. They're going from their spiritual emergency to their spiritual emergence. And we as counselors have the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. And so, like, superficially, you're providing a house and a structure to actually courier people past that transition, except that rather than support the employees who are actually making a difference, you undermine them, you don't provide team support, you're reactive, you're basically no better than the clients that are coming through the door.
Right. On the AlternativeHealthTools.com podcast, there will be shortly an episode on human trafficking and human freedom. So the topic really is about those people that are providing services and are passionate, trying to help other people and sort of getting burned out. And it's like, you can't really be like helping those that are enslaved if you're enslaved yourself.
The blind leading the blind.
Yeah, so sort of like that. So one thing we were talking about was in generations past, companies were formed, and there was an inherent gratitude for the employees for helping the owners of the company create essentially their dreams and their fortunes for their families. So the employees were really well taken care of. And that ethic, as we used the word earlier, is now gone. And I think, from what I can observe, is there is the quote-unquote areas of the millennials that are actually embracing the fact that they're actually interviewing the people that are hiring them for the companies that they're working for, which is absolutely necessary.
It's always how I've sort of gone into work, is, and even with clients, to be like, is this a good fit? Is this going to be something that's going to produce good results? So, okay, in a larger context, people get let go all the time. Certainly, I, as a solopreneur, I understand that me at the beginning, the first year of my company, I'm completely different at this point. You earn your maturity, you earn your stripes as you go. And there have been clients I've worked with where I'm sure that my skill set could have been much better at that time. So I apologize if there was any harm done. But it's a little different when it's just you, versus when you're playing with multi-millions of dollars and you're exacting opening centers, and you don't have a real business model to support your employees and then therefore, or to fill your centers, right? I want to make sure I reiterate this, that everything that was witnessed from me, I understood from a business side of things. And there is something to the nomenclature. It's just business. There's not emotion to it. It literally is like, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the logistics. What makes sense in this area? What doesn't make sense in this area? When you start any project, you have stars in your eyes and you think, oh, look at all the investment money we have. And then soon you see like all the snags and you make amendments accordingly. And some of the amendments are to let employees go. So in that sense, it is just business. But in the realm of being a counselor or being somebody who is going to host a rehabilitation thing, and I'm not talking AA, that's a completely different thing, you have a duty to do no harm. You have a duty to the Hippocratic Oath. Now, you have a duty to at least have that moral compass and that moral guide, and to hold the vision steady for transformation, hold the vision steady that this epidemic of drug use is going to be something that you invest your heart, not just your money in. And when you see that not happen, it's disgusting.
Yeah. So you just defined the ethic. It's disheartening, it's disgusting, and it creates a bigger problem. Right. Well, we were talking about that earlier. It's just like all of a sudden what you've done is laid a burden not just on the person that just was let go of, but she has somebody that depends on her, a little girl, I understand. But then there's also a whole societal thing. You know, it's just like you can't make decisions and not first take a look at the rippling effect. You know, it's just like the stone thrown into the lake, you know, it's just like, what's the impact going to be? And that's true for all things, especially now with environmental issues. It's like, I think twice before I start my car. I just do. So, I mean, you know, they're two different things, but
They all have. So the answer to the one thing you need to shift everything is vision. Is that the undercurrent of money, whatever the money and vibration is, and I would say if you want to make money, you have to be able to receive judgments from anybody. You know, you can call me a disgruntled employee, you can call me an idiot, you can call me a whore, you can call me whatever you want to call me, and I'll just receive that. I can just be like, yes, and, you know, like it takes one to know one, sort of.
right.
So money is about judgments. When we exchange judgments, that's what money is. Money is just the exchange of judgments. But beyond, the vision is beyond that. The vision is, for me, something that's about connection, community, relationship, and I want to break it down into a very familiar set of terms. And so when the focus is on just money, the acquisition or exchange of judgment, when it's just that's the focus, I'm in the hierarchy of like, well, I'm your boss. You know, suck a dick. No one's my boss. I'm sorry. This is not true. It's like God is my supply. I'm an arbiter of source. Spirit moves through me. I've been given a specific mission on this earth. I wake up every day to realize that mission. And just because you have some sort of title or because you have a different level of experience to me does not make you higher or lower than me. We are an equal playing field. And whatever that psychology is based on fear. It's based on fear. If I say, do, act, then I will lose my source of income. I can't emphasize it enough. God, higher power, whatever is your supply. If you look around this planet, it's an abundant planet. Look at how many things we've been able to create over and over and duplicate over and over. And that, you know, even if you want to call it the rat race, it's also a place that we're able to use resources in amazing ways. So what I want to say to really ground us in the understanding of the different concepts of like letting someone be your boss, instead of being empowered and knowing that you are your own boss, that, you know, only God can judge me. Tattoo on the neck. The rundown is this, and it's the 7 deadly sins on one side, where you make something external from yourself, your boss. So the first sin is pride, which is an excessive belief in one's own abilities that interferes with the individual's recognition of the grace of God.
I think you might want to say it again because I'm getting tingles and I would like them again. Yeah, that's nice.
Pride is the excessive belief in one's own abilities that interferes with the individual's recognition of the grace of God. Interferes. Pride interferes with the recognition of the grace of God. It has been called the sin from which all others arise. Pride is also known as vanity.
Thank you.
All right, let's go down the list. Envy is the desire for others' traits, status, abilities, or situation. Envy. I want that, but I can't have, so I will then lust after, which is the next sin. Lust is an inordinate craving for the pleasures of the body. Inordinate, disproportional, taking over all psychology, and, you know, you're off your rocker. And then that leads into gluttony, is an inordinate desire to consume more than which one requires, i.e., this company. Gluttonous motherfuckers. Greed is the desire for material wealth or gain, ignoring the realm of the spiritual. I'm going to say it way out here, like a Pentecostal preacher. Greed is the desire for material wealth, ignoring the realm of the spiritual. Ignorance, ignoramus, idiot, ignoring this thing. It's material, like as if this is really real, static, and it's not the end all be all. Anger is a manifestation of an individual who spurs love and opts instead for fury. One more time?
Yep.
Yeah. Anger is manifested in the individual who spurns love and opts instead for fury. It's also known as wrath. Lastly, sloth is the avoidance of physical or spiritual work. So,
okay, so you need to talk about that one a little bit.
I'm going to just go down the list really quickly. Pride, envy, gluttony, lust, anger, greed, sloth. 7 deadly sins. Sin, of course, is from archery, meaning to miss the mark. To miss the mark. You are missing the mark. The mark is clearly walking the spiritual path. Mm-hmm. Every one of these is the preventing, the controlling of, the loss of vision. You have lost your vision. You are blind. You are blinded by these sins. You're blinded by thinking that being off the mark is the mark. And we did this last week in number 6. What if your truth is a lie? People live this out. This company is living these 7 deadly sins out. You can feel it in the ranks. You can feel it in the hubris and the unintelligible decisions that they're making to ramp the stress up, and then to have the audacity to say, you are causing harm to the clients. I was like, projecting much? And I will happily own my part. I will happily own my part. Am I fit for every single client? No, I am not. I've probably offended several people, and I receive that judgment because I also receive money. And you cannot receive money if you're not willing to receive judgments. So, what do we do about this? Because there's a lot of people pissed off out there who've lost their jobs, who feel a sense of injustice, right?
Right.
Who are now in the welfare line, who never thought they would be, who are living under bridges, who know a lifestyle that they never thought that they would be living. And that is what I saw with the clients that came in. They were like, I never thought that I would be in a drugstore stealing drugs, that I never thought that I would be in a back alley doing what I needed to do so I could get my next fix. I never thought that I would be there. I never thought this one tiny sin would blow my whole life up. And I will say that is when your focus is on the material, you are blind. But if you want to open to the light and to the other side, then let's walk down the avenue of the virtues. The virtues are humility, kindness, abstinence, chastity, patience, diligence, and there's one that I'm having a little hard time pronouncing. You want to give it a shot? Liberality. And now I have to Google.
Not to be confused with Liberace.
Which there's nothing wrong with rhinestones. So those are a virtue. But what I want to say is, obviously there's also theological virtues, right. Love, hope, faith, cardinal virtues, prudence, temperance, courage, justice, and something that we've referenced in other shows, the scale of consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins, having shame be at the very bottom of the scale and peace be at the very top of the scale, and the tipping point in the middle is between pride and courage. When you change from the negative low density vibration into awakening, where you start to wake up and move out of the material into the spiritual. And I want to be sure to be able to provide a link to that particular chart. It's life-changing. It's life-changing.
Which means you'll send me a link.
Which means I'll send you a link. Linked up. We're all linked up. Linked up, LinkedIn, linked out.
Can probably find it anyway, but let's make sure we do.
So,
what do you do?
What do you do? I want to hold space for that anger, that sort of like, this is not right. This is unjust. Like, all of a sudden, a lie is perpetuated, right? And I will say this company had integrity issues out of the gate. They were just like, go get your TB test. We'll pay for them. No big deal. We come back after that and they're like, oh, we meant we'll pay $50 for them. We're not going to cover the whole thing, you know? And like out of the gate, I kind of threw a fit, but I was like, again, like I chose temperance in that moment. Which, you know, to hold my tongue and to, and again, the 7 heavenly virtues: faith, hope, charity, fortitude, justice, temperance, and prudence. And I'm not accused of prudence very often. But in that moment, I said, before I go on my evangelical diatribe on this, let's just see if they're just kind of getting started. Benny of the doubt, if you will. And sometimes there are jobs that you just sell your soul for. Mm-hmm. And let's just be honest, that's a big part of the commodity exchange, where it's like, here's this magical thing called a paycheck, and actually this is how it's fit into the system for you to get your basic needs met of food, shelter, warmth. And we're going to basically not acknowledge your humanity for your service, but show up and get the paycheck. And this is, I'm not going to go far into why the system is the way it is or the history of what it is. I'm sure all of you can watch the, I think it's a documentary called, it's about cold fusion being a possible tool. They talk a lot about the financial system. I think it's called. I'm blanking on it right now. So
if we were live and had a chat room,
yeah,
the answer would be there.
The answer would be there. Yeah. Envision maybe, or I forget exactly what it is, but specifically, again, I'll provide a link so people can kind of check it out. So there is conversation about why the banking system is the way it is, how the FDIC is set up on a debt. Its debt is what is it's set up on. There's actually no resources to back up the dollar. Like gold is not backing up the dollar anymore, and so we're living in this fictitious age. We're living in make believe. Basically, we're make believing, and so this is the point in the podcast. I really want people to get. Just if we're living in a world of make believe, and money is make believe, and it's just this thing that we're printing on just this paper that's going to disintegrate and go away, then how much more important is your vision? Your clear, connected to source, virtuous, beyond the sins, taking the step to have the spiritual path. How much more important is that vision? It is paramount. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, right? And conversely, pride goes before a fall, and a haughty spirit goes before destruction.
Is this where you ask for the amen?
I feel it coming. I feel it. And I want to speak on behalf of those who are sitting in the place of, this is not fair, this is unjust, how could somebody do this to me? I can't believe this, my boss is a jerk, I'm not getting acknowledged for what I want. Be the voice that rises up and changes the system, and albeit you might lose your job because of it, But there is another vision. There is something else on the horizon waiting for you. I will say every single day since I left that company, I knew for sure that faith would carry me to the next step, to the other side. And people have shown up in my life. Money has shown up in my life. Support has shown up in my life at exactly the right time. And it always arrives on time. Even the loss of the job always arrives on time. And so what to do about it is to not perpetuate the 7 sins yourself of sloth. I'm just going to, you can ask for support. Certainly WIC and HUD and other things are out there if you're really in that tight situation. If you do have a 3-year-old child to raise by yourself, there is support. But sloth is the avoidance of physical or spiritual work. So that's a sin. That's very much, like you said, the burden on society. That sin is a burden. And it's, but it's our duty to march on as soldiers, as spiritual soldiers, and to lead the way, pave the way, and continue to be example without malice in our hearts, without thinking, oh, it's the Muslims' fault, it's the Mexicans' fault, it's this other, the whites aren't stepping up or they've been too dominant for too long. We are all in this together. One more time. We are all in this together. So if you're feeling really spurned, upset, unjust, all of it, stop it. Get a new vision. You feeling me on this, right? Like
I'm getting it. Sure.
Swerve. Swerve. And find your swag. It's, it's in all of us. And you mentioned the millennial generation, doing it a little differently and figuring out that, we can work from coffee shops on our laptops, right, and we can be movers and shakers, and we can be creative and inventive in new ways. And that one of the core components that's really going to make a difference is community, and companies that embrace that ethic of being supportive of their constituents. And it hits home hard across America with unemployment rates, with an election pending, with a very clear split between the forces of good and evil. It feels all very, very much emotionally like Star Wars here, the dark side, the Empire versus the Force. Be spiritual, you will. So I have this advocate that rises inside of me that knows, and I was thinking about this on the way over here, that knows freedom is not just this cute little name anymore. Freedom is at the core of every spiritual movement to liberate.
And it's being challenged.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The lower vibration, if there's a spiral,
mm-hmm,
and there's the sort of at the lower levels, it's being challenged right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to actually rise above it,
mm-hmm,
and look down on it,
mm-hmm,
and make the change. Because I think there's a whole lot of, not such a bad idea to just leave it behind. You can't change it.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the great concepts I really got on the last 6 months is consider not thinking outside the box. Actually, create a new box.
Just and to shift the paradigm. And there's actually a really quick TED Talk on. It shows this video of how change is made, and there's this whole crowd of festival goers, and one guy decides to be the crazy one to get up and start dancing first. Well, they pointed out it's not him that makes the movement. It's the second person
that follows him. And then that gives the crowd permission. It's like the first joiner, right, the first person to join. And so, again, if you don't have to I want to take that thing of like, oh my gosh, create a new box, to say like, actually, there are ethical movements
out there, World Wildlife Fund, not Susan G. Komen, not ethical, but there's other movements or communities, whether it just be your the garden for your community that you participate in, or a bigger movement like replanting the rainforest or whatever that is. You can be the first joiner.
Yeah.
And really create that ripple effect where it gives people permission to also build the momentum in that right direction. It also reminds me of Bishop T.J. Banks, and he's a great orator. And he had a sermon on pigeons, I think pigeons versus eagles. And I might be confusing the birds, but again, the overarching thing was that pigeons have their head to the ground and they're pecking on the ground for their food. And eagles soar high. And in fact, God made it so that eagles, when they mate with each other, embrace in the air, lock and fall while mating, and then break before they hit the earth. And he was like, that is so they would not mate with pigeons.
But that image is so rich.
Mm-hmm. It's such a palpable, powerful image, because when you rise up and you rise strong, like Brene Brown says, and you become that eagle and you can soar and see that vast perspective, you will not then go down to the level of the pigeon with your head down, pecking off the ground, right? You will not be in that thing. And in fact, but it's not to rise up in a place of pity. Oh, poor them, poor pigeon. It's rather to say, like, they are at a particular place in their journey, and I have evolved, ascended, and I'm waking up. I am waking up. That is vision. That is the vision. The one thing you need to shift everything is you wake up to this new light, this new vision, these new awarenesses. And when you have new awarenesses, you always have new choices that follow, versus being locked into a particular pattern, believing that someone is your boss. No one's your boss unless you let them be.
Yeah, if anything, I'm their boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if anything, it's like I've shown that, and what I know to be true about my particular, the person who God let go, is heart and soul kind of coworker. You know, really she did have the vision and had the heart for this particular thing. So I want to say to everybody who feels that way and is not acknowledged for it, I'm acknowledging you. You're acknowledged. I feel you here in Encinitas, California. That's my hybrid, having lived in Boulder, Colorado. And so they're sort of similar. And Encinitas is like Boulder by the bay a bit. So, what I would say is that I feel you. I feel that effort being made. I feel the sanghas of coming together for meditation. I feel the prayers that are being lifted up in the churches. I feel the mothers and fathers waking up in the morning and being able to provide a home and a house for their kids and making sure that their kids are raised with morals and ethics. I feel the effort of the good heart of the eagles lifted up on wings like eagles. I feel your effort. I acknowledge you. I see you. I know if no one else ever says thank you, that you're a child of God, and you are an active act of gratitude every time you make the choice to ascend and to step into the virtuous place. You make a difference. You make a difference. You champion the dark, the greed, the sin. You stand as an advocate in your smile. That's it. Your smile and your breath and your ability to say, that's not okay. What was done, I can handle it for me. I'm a champion. I'm a phoenix. I got this. I rise up and I help other people rise up. Rebekah, freedom all the way. When I see it happen to somebody, it's not okay. In fact, there's a story of an Auschwitz survivor who was asked, how did you do it? How did you do it? How did you make it through solitary and all that time by yourself? and to know the atrocities that were happening around you. And this particular survivor said, well, the first thing I did is I never got lazy, and I kept a system so I knew what day of the week it was. And I could watch the calendar go by. Again, complete solitary. The second thing I did was to make sure that I bathed each day, if only a small towel and a little bit of water, so that I could keep my dignity. And the third thing I did is I told myself, what is being done is not okay. It is not okay. And with that, I didn't lose my sanity. I kept my dignity, and I was a champion. So I really want to be a voice and an advocate to say that you can't control or manipulate or shift other people's choices. It's what you do with them moving forward that creates enlightenment, that allows you to hold the vision. This is one that I would really like feedback on, as far as how the split between dark and light, how the split between sins and virtues, how the split between being employed and walking your path is really impacting people on an individual, emotional level. And let me know. Bring it. Bring your judgments. Yeah. Bring your worries. Bring it. I'm here. I'm here to be able to receive your stories, because it goes way beyond this one incident. I think the word you mentioned, he doesn't want people to know this, is revolution.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much all needs to go.
Mm-hmm. To be able to create and live that paradigm. And I believe we're very much moving to it. And so the last thing I would really say is that our fight, again, this is all biblical reference, our fight is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the things more than meets the eye. And we can have a further discussion about this, and you can reach me at RebekahFreedom.com. That's REBEKAH freedom.com. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this stirred some Irie in you, and I look forward to hearing from you. I love you, and take care. Freedom.